everybody. Welcome to the Freedom Nation podcast. This is Jeff here once again. And today I am a featured podcaster on the Podapalooza. And my guest today is Vicki Noethling. Vicki is a speaker trainer and has a really interesting background. So Vicki, welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I'm happy to be here on the Freedom Nation Podapalooza version.
I appreciate you being on. It's really cool to hear about you, what your pathway has been to get to this point. So why don't you tell us your story real quickly?
Sure. So I have been exposed to corporate for over 40 years.
Okay.
And I worked for an accounting firm. I worked for a fast food chain corporate office. And I also worked for a very large transportation company for 27 years and retired from there.
Mm-hmm.
And during that time, I was exposed to a lot of people who were not great speakers. And also, I had some great leaders and managers, supervisors, and not so great. So when I retired and had spent a couple years going on vacation and to the pool and playing with my grandkids, I decided I needed to do something to make a difference. And so I started my speaker trainer and coaching business.
Okay.
And shortly thereafter, I started my podcast, the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast, and have been enjoying this life so much. And the podcasting, I think, was a great add-on to being able to really connect with people, where it's not just the 5 minutes of telling people your story in a networking meeting, if you even get that.
Yeah.
It's really being able to connect and hear a person's story and see how can they help my audience. And I feel not so much an influencer as a connector.
Okay.
I want to be able to have you not feel isolated as an entrepreneur, be able to reach out to people that can solve problems that you might have, or hear things that you think, oh my God, I didn't even know I had that issue. And now this person can help me. So that's a little bit about who I am and what I do.
So let's talk a little bit about, that's really two dissimilar paths, sort of similar, but dissimilar paths. So from the speaking perspective, what do you see? And I can relate to having spent many years in the corporate world. What do you see are some of the biggest challenges people have when it comes to speaking and getting their message across?
So just like you said a moment ago, there really are two different aspects. Whenever I talk about speaking, it's speaking in person or speaking in this virtual world. And what we learned at COVID brought blessings as well as horrible things. And what we learned is that you can effectively communicate in this virtual environment. You can build relationships and be able to reach and touch people across not only the state, the city, but across the world. But not everybody does it so well.
Yeah.
And so some of the things I offer is like, I'll give you a 30-minute checkup of your setup. What is your lighting like? What is your sound like? Where you're positioning yourself? Are you just like this head in this thing that's scary sometimes? Are you able to really make them forget that they are talking to a little dot as opposed to being disconnected from your audience? As you're speaking in this virtual world, do you look away and disconnect? Whereas in person, you might not worry about as much the lighting and that if you're in smaller rooms and things, but how are you having that engagement with your audience and the way that you move around the room and the way that you have the vocal variety and tones in any environment is important. But whenever you're in person, you want to maybe I always say it's like acting, where you have to be bigger and bolder and brighter to make it really reach the people in the back of the room as much as the people in the front of the room.
Well, and
so
I would say, I'd even say on Zoom or on virtual, you almost have to be much more animated because you come across almost very morose if you don't go just over the top.
Yeah. And it's really, as a speaker, a trainer, a facilitator, You have to remember that the best way to engage and captivate is take them on that roller coaster ride. So you don't want to have that monotone, and you don't also want to be way up here the whole time, because that can be annoying.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be so soft and so quiet, because that could put them to sleep. So it is taking them on that roller coaster ride. And so for me, one of my keynotes is it's just a conversation.
Mhm.
All these years that I've been working with people, I found that when you forget that it's a speech, a pitch, or any kind of presentation, and you try to have a conversation as natural, it's authentic, it allows back and forth banter that makes that person feel part of the conversation. And it naturally, you add in all of those different tonal changes, the vocal variety, because whenever you're in that casual situation, you don't need to think about it. I always say you don't script going out to dinner with anybody. Well, maybe some people do,
Yeah.
but you shouldn't.
Yeah.
And you don't say, oh, wait a second, can we pause while I get my phone? My presentation is here and I need to refer to my notes of what I'm going to say next. We don't do that.
No.
And yet people generally stay with us and they enjoy and they laugh and they have a good time. I always joke, it's like, you can even be funny in those situations.
Yeah. You don't have
believe it
to
or
have that
not.
scripted either. You
Yeah,
might want to just off the
exactly.
top. Yeah.
And
Well,
and some of the best podcasts I have are where we have a few questions, but then that question leads to another question, and it just makes it so much more interesting.
once again, it's just a conversation.
It
You know,
is.
right,
It
right along the
is.
lines. It's just a
Mhm.
conversation, and that
Yes.
leads to wherever you want. I
Yeah.
think as I'm thinking through this, okay, you've got the sheer communication of it, tacking into your other side of what you do, leadership. I'm
Yeah.
assuming a big part of what you talk about in leadership is that communications ability
Yeah.
and getting your message across.
Absolutely. To be a great leader today, as we were talking before we got started, is 21st century leaders. You can't use the rule book that we had when I learned to be a manager, a
Mm,
supervisor, a leader in the 80s. That was how big is your hammer? And
yeah.
it's my way or the highway, and do it this way. And speak and when you're asked to speak, and don't share your ideas. And that's just doesn't work anymore.
Mhm.
And we have 5 generations of people. So you can't be that manager's the one way is the only way. I need to get to know each of my people, which is more work.
Mhm.
And nobody said being successful wasn't going to be hard,
Yeah.
but it's more work because you need to be able to get to know them, to see what motivates them, what persuades them, what's their triggers to make them want to do more. You oftentimes have to be that constant cheerleader to
Mhm.
really believe in them before they believe in themselves. So you have to have empathy. When
Yeah.
you talk to them, they have to know that you understand. And if you don't, then you need to ask questions to be able to gain understanding. And all of those things mean you have to be a better communicator.
Mhm.
And everything that I teach and how to be a good speaker makes you a better leader.
Yeah. I think you're more aware of what you're doing at that point. If you're
Yeah.
just getting up, how many times have we sat through presentations from somebody where they don't even remember what they put on their slides, and then the
Yeah.
slideshow blows up, and then they're panicked and can't actually ad lib their way through it a little bit. You
Mhm.
obviously don't even know what you're talking about. You're just relying on the slides to prompt you.
Yeah. And that's really important too. I think one of the things I also train is that whenever you do a presentation or a speech, it's better to ask come a little early and ask some questions of your audience,
Mm,
because there have been times when I go to speak to somebody and I see that what they needed to hear wasn't what I was going to say,
mm,
but I could help them. And so I just then changed things up. And I don't often use slides. If I do, it's pictures and
mhm.
things,
Yep.
because I think they're more memorable. And I need to be able to give them what they need and not what I wanted to present.
One of my mentors in the speaking world was probably one of the best speakers I've ever seen. He was inside corporate of all things. He didn't really work outside of that. When he would train us to go and speak like for community events,
Mhm.
he would basically say, okay, give me your presentation. Now cut the slides in half. Now
Yeah.
cut the slides in half again. Now cut the slides in half again and get to the point where you were down to, I think, 6 slides was the maximum that he would allow us to go public and do. And it's amazing how you get creative when you have to
Yeah.
do that, which ones you're willing to give up.
Yeah. And a lot of times slides, unless you purposely make them interactive, which I try
Mhm.
to do, but they keep you from really asking questions
Yeah.
or really being able to be engaging with the audience. And so if you just talk at people, and this is
Mhm.
true in conversations too,
Yeah.
if you just talk at them, then they're not going to remember what you said because they didn't connect
Mhm.
what they feel, what they see, what they hear with what you said. And so there, that back and forth is actually really making this conversation, this um, talk memorable.
Yeah.
And that also, by asking questions, gives you guidance in what they need to hear next. Because as I said, what you had to say next may not be even on your script
Mhm.
of what they need to hear.
That's brilliant. Well, let's now transition to the fast 5 questions. You ready?
Mhm.
All right. First question. You wake up in the morning, 500 and your business is gone. You have 500
Mhm.
bucks in your pocket, a laptop computer, a place to live, and food and clothing. What are you going to do first?
I have a lot of skills and I have been in that
Yeah.
situation. So what I'm going to do is just put myself out there. I can put out a webinar that offers a free something that can lead to having them being a coaching. I can offer my skills as a project lead. I can offer my skills as teaching them how to do great podcasts. So there are things that I can do, but I think the key to that $500 scenario is that you have to do something.
Mhm.
You can't sit and feel sorry for yourself. You can't sit and worry about it. And if you only say, well, I'll get more training, and
Yep.
you don't do something, it's not going to change.
Yeah. It's a
So,
way of hiding at that point. I
yeah,
need more training. I can't do this if I don't have the training. Well, no, you just got to get out there and do it.
yeah.
What is the biggest business mistake you've ever made?
So I guess the biggest business mistake I made was it goes back to that coaching and training
Mhm.
where I was connected with somebody that I didn't resonate with
Okay.
and it cost me a whole lot of money.
Hmm.
And I didn't really believe that I knew what I knew.
Mhm.
And not to say that I didn't learn from that
Yeah.
individual, but it just put me in a bad financial way that I
Mhm.
should not have. I should have seen that coming. And you get that gut feeling. And
Mhm.
that's part of what I teach too is go with your
Usually when you
gut.
have the gut feeling, you
Yeah.
pretty much better listen to it in those
Yeah.
cases.
Yeah.
What's a good book that you'd recommend for our audience?
Mm. So one of my favorite books, I have a couple, but because I also recommend you read 10 pages of a good book every day.
Nice.
But The Slight Edge is one of the books by Jeff Olson that just talks about how everything you do, those small wins,
Mhm.
really compound over time to get to your big goals. And I think a lot of times keep that keep us stuck is that we're trying to do big, audacious goals. And we don't realize that the pathway to that big, audacious goals is just a little bit at a
Mhm.
time that are not overwhelming
Yeah.
and that can be fun. And oftentimes it's when you reflect the week, what did you get accomplished? And you see, I did all these things. That big goal gets closer and you didn't even know it.
Yep.
And so it helps with stress.
I run in my life personal objectives and key results. So I basically have a
Mhm.
ginormous board on my wall with sticky notes on it, and I just every day as I accomplish something, I peel those sticky notes off over a
Awesome.
13-week period. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the little things.
Yeah. I do just a whiteboard with bubble
Yeah.
charts.
Same
Okay.
difference. Yeah. It's just, you got to do something that helps you just make those
Yeah.
little small changes every day.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. What is a tool that you use in your business every day that you might recommend?
There are a lot of tools out there. I think the thing that I use every day is I have two monitors.
Okay.
And so it's funny, you probably think, oh, she's going to give me software things. And
Oh.
I'm discovering AI and loving all of that. But
Mm.
really, the thing that was from an efficiency standpoint for me is I have two monitors so that as I'm doing my podcasting, the prep as well as the post, I can get this down to like 15, 20 minutes to
Mhm.
get something done because I use my two screens. When I had the one screen, I had to go back and forth. And what did that say? So investing in two screens is not a huge investment, but it's really a good investment if you're trying to be as efficient as you can.
I took it to another level and I have three screens plus I have two screens plus my laptop. So can totally relate. And once you get to the point where it's like, okay, I can put certain things on certain screens and then leave them there, it just makes your life so much easier.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, I was just going to say you just have to say you're worth that investment. There are some things you should invest in your business that will help you.
That's a pretty low cost investment in your
Mm-hmm.
business. And I think your sanity in the end.
Yes.
Okay. Last question for you. What is your definition of freedom?
So my definition of freedom really centers around the fact that what makes me happy. And so I love doing what I do right now. And so keeping that going and finding ways to monetize it is what make me happy. But really all the things that I do are to allow me to be able to spend time with my family and my grandsons.
Beautiful.
I'm 65 years old and I want them to have me as an example of someone that old age is just a number, and it is really important that you do what you like and what you love and always learn, continue to learn. This old lady's continuing to learn every day. And that's exciting and it's interesting. And I love one of my talks, I talk about having that 4-year-old innovation and creativity that any challenge is like putting together a Lego set. You don't know what you got until you start putting it all together.
It's a shame, I think, that our school systems beat the creativity out of us in a lot of cases.
And that is so true. And I work with the youth too, just for that reason, to try to bring them back to that innovation.
Well, Vicki, I can tell you, I would have never guessed your age by any means. And I've always said this of people. I've met some of the youngest 90-year-olds and the oldest 60-year-olds. And I think it's a state of mind and it's keeping that sense of wonder about you. And you definitely have that.
So, I also am a anti-aging and wellness person.
So I'm going to do whatever it takes.
So if you don't like this business, just visit me on my other one.
And it's working for you. So we'll go with that. So Vicki, if somebody wants to find out more about you and connect, what's the best way to do that?
So I send everyone right now to my findyourleadership.com website. Okay. And in about a month, I'll have an app, which is under my name, Vicki Noethling. And you can connect with me and do all kinds of fun things on my app. But right now, you can just go to the website. Works. Yes, it works great.
Awesome. We'll include that in the show notes. So Vicki, thank you very much for being on the show today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's been a great pleasure. And I love talking about freedom.
I love it too. So folks, if you enjoyed this, make it a point to share Vicki's story with somebody in your world that could use that. And take a chance, say, hey, let's subscribe to the channel wherever you're listening or watching this at. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that little like button so that we know that you're out there. So thanks a lot. We do these shows 2 times a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays for you. And we will be back here the very next time. All in you, everything